Okay, we are picking up on the bottom of Hey Amud Aleph. We are the last line on the Amud. It says so. The Gemara was talking about. We're kind of like a new thing now. The Mishnah talked about the fact that there was a concept of postponing Tisha B'av. So now we're going to go into that a little bit. So the Gemara, the Brisa says there was a story that took place. Some Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Natan Atiyah Purim. Rabbi planted a tree on Purim, turning now to Hey Amud Beis. So what happened? V'rachatz b'krona shel tzipori b'shivas b'tamuz, and he took a bath in the bathhouses on the market day in Tzipori, where everyone was able to see him. Not everyone was able to see him doing it, but everyone saw that he was going to the bathhouse to go take a bath on Shivas b'tamuz. V'vikesh lakros Tisha B'av, and he wanted to abolish Tisha B'av. And the Chaim did not agree with him when it came to abolishing Tisha B'av. So we're going to see what does it mean that he wanted to abolish Tisha B'av. So I'm on the phone of Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda. So Rabbi Abba said to Rabbi Lazar, he says, Rebbe, lo kacha yamaisa. It wasn't that he wanted to abolish Tisha B'av of every single year that was taking place. Ela Tisha B'av shechal yos b'Shabbos hava. That year that he did it was Tisha B'av had fallen out on Shabbos. Utchinhu la'achar Shabbos, and it was already being postponed to Sunday. And Rebbe said, V'amar Rebbe, hov and nidcha yidcha. Once we already pushed it off from Shabbos, we should push it off completely. Lo horu chacham. So the Mefarshim explain, Rebbe did not want to abolish Tisha B'av completely. But Tisha B'av, there's four major Tanasim that we have. Shavas b'Tamuz, Tisha B'av, Asar b'Teves, and Tzom Gedalia. And Tisha B'av is, besides Yom Kippur, Tisha B'av is stricter than all the other Yom Tov, and that it has all the Yinum, all the things that we do that we don't do on other fast days. We don't bathe, wearing shoes, etc. There's other things you're not allowed to do. So Rebbe was saying, once we're pushing off Tisha B'av, that we're not fasting on Tisha B'av anymore, so fine, so we're pushing it off to Sunday, and we're not going to, so we're still going to fast, but he wanted to make it that it should be on the same level as all the other fasts that we have, like let's say as Shavas b'Tamuz, that all you're doing is you're not eating and drinking. The Chacham did not agree to him, so Kari Alei, so when Rabbi Lazar heard this from Abba Bar Zavda, he said the pasuk, Tov mashinayim ina echad, that it's better to have two than one, meaning that if I would have just gone with what I had learned, I would have thought that it meant that Rebbe wanted to completely do away with Tisha B'av. But you explained to me what the situation was, and I understand it better, which is the same concept. When you're learning in a shir, a lot of times if you're learning by yourself, you think you have an understanding with the Gemara, and then you learn in a shir with other people, you get more clarification as you're going through it together because you're able, or with Chavrusa, because you're able to, you're able to sound it out better when you have someone else you're bouncing ideas off of. Okay, so Gemara talks about now, so we said that Rebbe planted a tree on Purim. So Gemara asks, Rebbe, heichi natzah natiyah b'Purim. How did Rebbe plant a tree on Purim? V'tani Rabbi Yosef says in the Brisa, it says in the Megillah, Simcha u'mishta v'yamtiv. It says in the pasuk that they were supposed to have, there was happiness, and there was mishta, and there was yamtiv. And what does that mean? Simcha, when it says in the pasuk Simcha, that means, Malamit shasurim behesped, it tells you that on the days of Purim, again, and we're going to see which day of Purim we're talking about, meaning the 14th and 15th, etc. So, and Simcha tells you that you're not allowed to have hespedim on Purim. Mishta, and when it says that you're not allowed, that Mishta, what does that mean? That they were not able to fast. And Yamtiv and Yamtiv teaches you that you're not allowed to do work on Purim. So therefore, how could Rebbe plant a tree on Purim? That's considered to be malacha, and he shouldn't. And theoretically, he shouldn't be able to plant a tree on Purim. So Gemara says, Ella Rebbe Bar Arbeser Hava. Rebbe was someone who celebrated, who he observed Purim on the 14th because he lived in an unwalled city. And when he planted the tree, he planted it on the 15th. So therefore it wasn't an issue. The malacha he wouldn't do on Purim itself. This was the 15th, when the walled cities were celebrating Purim, so then he was able to do malacha. So Gemara questions now, Aini, is it so that Rebbe was someone that, how can you say that Rebbe was someone that celebrated Purim on the 14th and not the 15th? But Rebbe lived in Tiberia. Tiberia was a city that was walled from the times of Yeshua ben Nun, and as we know, if it was walled from the times of Yeshua ben Nun, it means that they observed Purim on what day? On the 15th. So how could he go ahead and plant on the 15th? How could he say that he was someone that was a 14er, or whatever you want to call it, if he lived in Tveria, which was the 15th? When it says, Ela Rebbe Bar Chameser Hava, you're right. He was someone that observed Purim on the 15th. And when he planted the tree, he did it on the 14th. So the Gemara asks now, Mi Pshitale, the Tveria Mukafis Chami Mosim Yeshua Benon, is it for a certainty that Tveria was a city that had walls already from the times of Yeshua? But Chizkiya Kari Tveria Bar Beis V'Chametzar. Chizkiya was unsure because Misafkale Mukafis Chami Mosim Yeshua Benon Hiyalo. Chizkiya would read on the 14th and the 15th in Tveria because he wasn't sure whether or not the city of Tveria had walls from the days of Yoshua ben Nun. So how could you say that Rebbe was able to go ahead and he lived in Tveria, so he did only on the 15th? In Tveria, there was a question what it was, so the 14th and the 15th you shouldn't be able to do malacha. The Gemara answers, it's not a problem. Chizkiya misafkalei, the Rebbe pshitalei. Chizkiya was unsure what day, whether Tveria was walled or not. Rebbe was sure, so Rebbe doesn't have to hold like Chizkiya. Rebbe is a Tana. He can argue and he can have his own, his own thoughts on the subject. So he felt that Tveria, he was sure was a city that had been surrounded by walls since the days of Yoshua, and therefore he planted on the 14th, and he was okay with, and he observed Purim on the 15th. So Gemara asks now, but even so, even if you say that Rebbe was sure that Tveria was a walled city, and therefore they observed on the 15th, Mishari, then is he allowed to plant on the 14th? Megillah's Tainus, it says Megillah's Tainus, which was a book of which we don't observe, we don't have it anymore, but it said it's Yom Arba Asar Ves Yom Chamisha Asar. It said on the 14th and the 15th, Yom Puria Inon, they're the days of Purim, to La Mitzvah Bahon, that we don't have a spade in. V'amar Rav, and Rav said, Lo Nitzcha El Asar Shel Zeh B'Zeh. It's so that Megillah's Tainus is telling you that whatever you don't do on the one, you don't do on the other one. So therefore, you don't do, again, vice versa. So if so, how can you say that Rebbe observed only on the 15th because he was sure that Tveria was a walled city, and therefore he planted on the 14th? But in Megillah's Tainus, we see that the people would be, they would accept upon themselves to not do either one on the 14th and on the 15th. So Gemara answers, they only accepted not to do hespedim and not to fast on those 2 days. But for as far as work goes, they only accepted, it was too much for them to accept upon themselves not to work for 2 days. So they only accepted not to work on the day that was actually Purim for them, and that was it. When I asks again, Eini v'harav chazilahu gavra davakashari kista bepuria. Rav saw that there was a man that was he was sowing flax on Purim, and he cursed him out. So and his flax didn't grow. Now, why did he curse him if he was doing it on if it's not a problem with they only accepted not fasting and not giving hespedim, not fasting. They only accepted that they don't fast and they don't give hespedim, but it's not a problem to do work. So why do you have a problem with that? So my answer is Hasan bar Yomahava. When Rav saw this person planting the flax seed, that was the day for him that was Purim. So everyone agrees that on that day you're not allowed to do any work. So therefore, that's why he gave him a curse, and that's why the flax didn't grow. Okay, another reason why we say that Rebbe was able to now plant on Purim. What?
Is it on the same level? Because maybe it's like...
Is what on the same level?
Say the other day.
So it's a machlokus about working on Purim. That's in general. You see that even today you see that's still a question about working on Purim.
That's the day out, but the other day you're saying.
The other day is not a problem. The Gemara agrees that the other day is not a problem. Meaning, if someone observes Purim on the 14th, he lives in an unwalled city, so for him it's the 14th, everyone seems to agree that on the 15th, you could do work. That's not a problem. It's just the Hesped and the Tanesim that we say that they don't do. But it's just the work. Okay. Rabbi Amar, Afilu Tema B'Yoma, you could even say that Rebbe planted on the day of what was for him for Purim. So if so, how was he able? So how was he able to do it? And the Gemara answers because Hesped of Tain is Kabbalah, because according to this Shita, they only accepted, like we were just asking, they only accepted upon themselves the Tainus and the Hesped, but according to this Shita, they did not accept, even on the day of Purim itself, they did not accept to stop doing work, so therefore he was able to do it. To make Karksiv, because in the beginning of the Pasuk it says in the Megillah, Simcha, Mishta, V'Yamtiv, those three, which again we learned out was, fasting, not giving a spade in, and to not work. But later on, towards the end of the Megillah, it says, Lasso some you may mishta v'simcha v'ilu yamtiv loksiv. It doesn't say yamtiv, which is where we learn out that you have to treat it like a yamtiv that you can't work, so therefore it's not a problem. So if that's the case, Rav, my time so if that was the case that it's okay for someone to do work on Purim, so why did Rav give a curse to the person that was planting the flax? Why he's able to do work? So the Gemara answers, because was it something where it's a davar that you're able to do it, but if everyone in the city accepts upon themselves that they're not going to do it, which Purim is one of those times, there are cities that accepted upon themselves that even though it's mutter to do work, but we're accepting that we're not going to do work on Purim. So this person was planting the flax, that was planting the flax. He was living in a city that they had accepted upon themselves that they weren't going to do work on Purim, and he still planted on Purim. So therefore he cursed them. But where Rebbe planted the tree, he was living in a city where they did not accept upon themselves to do it, so therefore it wasn't an issue. And the Gemara gives another answer why he was able to do it. By saying, really we're talking about a place that even Rebbe was in a place where they had accepted upon themselves that they were not going to do any work on Purim. So if so, how was he able to plant? He was planting a planting of joy, and the Gemara is going to explain now what that planting of joy is. Now, like we learned in the Mishnah in Tainus, the Gemara in Tainus talks about the Mishnah in Tainus talks about, and it goes into that if they didn't get the rains by certain dates, so again, remember, in Eretz Yisrael, they're an agricultural society, so they're extremely dependent on the rain. So if it doesn't rain there, it's a really big problem. So if by certain target dates, if it hadn't rained, so they would be gozer, they would decree to have fasts, a series of fasts, that first some people of the Jewish people had to do it, and then eventually the whole community had to do it. So one of the things that we said, that if let's say they had these fasts had passed and the rain had not yet fallen, so what they do? They would start doing less business. They would start doing less building and less planting. They would do less engagements and weddings. V'tana Allah, and we learned over there, when it says binyan, what does it mean, binyan? Binyan shel simcha. They would not do a binyan shel simcha, and a tiyah shel simcha. And so first of all, what's a binyan? So Rashi says, actually the Gemara is going to say, and then Rashi explains it, and a tiyah shel simcha, ezu binyan shel simcha, what is considered a binyan of simcha? Zeh bona bayis chasnas lebno, that's someone who builds a house of chasana for his son. That the minhag was in those days, probably a little bit better than what we do now, is that instead of throwing these big gala affairs when someone would get married and they would spend thousands and thousands of dollars even in a package deal, it still costs a lot of money. What they would do is that for the firstborn, the father would build a house that would have the chuppah in it, and it was also a place that his son was going to be able to live. So that's what they would use with their funds. So that's considered to be a binyan shel simcha. And ezu netiyah, that's the tiyah shel simcha. Zenotea avnuka shel malachim. That was talking about there was they would plant these plants that would kind of get intertwined with these wooden structures. And what that was a place that the kings were able to sit in the summertime. They were able to eat in the shade of these plants. So that's considered to be a binyan shel simcha. So that's what that's what they would stop doing. But regular binyan, they would still engage in regular commerce that they had to do. So Rebbe was able to plant a tree still, because the only things that they stopped doing was a binyan of simcha, and therefore he was able to do it. I'm sorry, the other way. They stopped doing regular business for a binyan of simcha that they would be doing, and Rebbe was planting a binyan shel simcha, and that's how he was able to do it. Okay, Gemara says gufa. So now we're going to talk about and now for the next blot, or let's say amen and a half solid. It's going to go into different cities. It's going to talk about Tiberia. So we're going to start with Gufa, Chizkiah Kari, B'Tarveria, Barbesa, V'Chamesha. He would read the Megillah in Tiberia on the 14th and the 15th. We said that because Misafkalei Imukefes Chomi Mos Yeshua Ben Nun he wasn't sure whether or not there was a wall surrounding Tiberia. So what was the question with Tiberia? Why was there a question about Tiberia? That these cities were fortified from the times of Yeshua, the Kaimelon, Rakas zu Tiberia. That Rakas, which is one of the cities that's mentioned, which the Gemara in the next Amud is going to say why it was called that was Tiberia. So if so, why was Chizki in question? Whether it was the 14th or 15th, we see that the pasuk says beferish that it was a fortified city going back to Yeshua that was Rakas, and we say that's Tiberia. So Gemara says Hainu time with the Mesafkalei. This is the reason why he was in doubt. Mishum dechad gisa shura diyamahava, because there's and actually, I'd emailed, Eli Stefanski has great pictures, like visuals for this stuff. So I emailed him to see, or America's Amud Yomi, to see if I could borrow their pictures that they have, because it's very clear. If you look at a picture of Tiberia, one of the sides of Tiberia is a wall. The other side, it's surrounded by the sea. So it's not. So the Gemara is saying. So it wasn't sure because it's not completely surrounded by stone. That was a question whether or not it's considered to be walled from the time of Yeshua ben Nun. So ihachi amai misafkle. What's the question? Vaday lav chomi. It's for sure not considered a wall. If you're saying that one side is water, that's not considered a wall. The Tanya, because we learned ashelo chama. We had this Gemara a couple of blot ago, which says that the pasuk says which has a wall. Below shor igar means it doesn't have a wall of houses. Saviv, what does it mean when it says the pasuk surrounding? Pratla Tveria shiyama chamasa, and not to exclude Tveria. That its walls that it's surrounded by water. This is again referring to the concept of if someone sells a house. So the question was how long after you sell the house in Eretz Yisrael are you able to go back and I don't know if renege on the sale is the right word, but you're able to take back. You're able to take the house back. So we said it depends what's going on. It depends if it has a wall or not. So but we see over there it says explicitly that Taveri is excluded because it has one side that's surrounded by water. So why do you have a question? So Gemara says. This is what the question was. As far as the question of whether it's a walled city, Chizkiah was sure that Taveri is considered to be an unwalled city because it has water surrounding it. Megillah was a question about reading the Megillah, though. That my prazim and my mukafin, because when we use the words prazim and mukafin, how are we defining those two words? So the Chsiv Gabi Mirka Megillah. Mishum Dahani Miglu, do we say that it's because they're open, Vahani Lo Miglu, and the unwalled cities are not open, so therefore that's the differentiation. And therefore Vahanami Miglains, therefore Tveria is exposed because it doesn't have a wall, it only has water. O Dilma, Mishum Dahani Mignu, Vahani Lo Mignu. Maybe it has to do with it's not a question of if there's a physical wall that's there. It has a question of is how protected is it? Because again, it's all going back to Shushan, that Shushan was a walled city, and it was a question of that they had another day that they were able to fight because they were better fortified. So the question is maybe it's because they have better protection, and that's why they would celebrate on the 15th. V'hani lo mignu, and these aren't protected. V'hanami migna, and over here in Tveria, because it was surrounded by water, it would be considered to be it was protected. So therefore, mishum hachim misafkule, therefore that's why you had a question whether or not it was considered to be the 14th or the 15th. Let's do one more piece of Gemara. Ravasi Chaim Megillah b'Hutzol Barbesa v'Chamesar. Ravasi would read the Megillah in Hutzol, which was a city that was on the border on the 14th and the 15th. V'Safkele Mukefes Chomi Mos Yeshua ben Nun Hiolo. He wasn't sure whether or not it had a walled city from the time of Yeshua or not. Ika the Amar Ravasi Hai Hutzol the Beis Binyamin Mukefes Chomi Mos Yeshua he that it has a wall from the times of Yeshua ben Nun, and therefore they would read the Megillah on the 15th. Okay, we will stop here. Tomorrow night, I'll post it on the chat, but I think it's going to depend. If Rabbi Silber is giving his Hilchos Shabbos shir in here, then I would imagine that we're going to be in here. And if he's giving it in the new building, then I would imagine we're going to be in the new building. So I will